These costs and consequences inherent to cap-and-trade schemes have led many policy experts and economists to prefer another course of action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That other option is a revenue-neutral carbon tax. I know that's hard for a politician to say, so we've given them a new name. They can call it a refundable greenhouse gas emissions fee. Now, as a businessman, I have to take a deep breath every time I talk about this subject because it is very difficult for me to speak favorably about any new tax. So I hope you take it as an indication of how serious we think the issue is. A revenue-neutral carbon tax, though, has the advantage of being well-focused for achieving our society's shared goals of reducing emissions over the long term. It can be made predictable, transparent, and comparatively simple to understand and implement. A carbon tax can create a clear and uniform cost for emissions in all economic decisions. This encourages every business, every industry, and every consumer to become more efficient and do their part to increase efficiency and reduce emissions through other choices they might make. Because a carbon tax is directly applied to the carbon content of fossil fuels or to other greenhouse gas emissions, there is no need for government to pick winners and losers in the industry through such complex allowance and allocation processes as we have witnessed on the Hill of late. By eliminating price volatility, a carbon tax provides predictability. And predictability allows entrepreneurs and businesses to plan over the long term, to research emerging technologies and develop the integrated solutions that have the most positive impact. A carbon tax also avoids the cost and complexity of having to build a new market for emissions allowances or the necessity of adding a new layer of regulators and administrators to police this market. And a simple carbon tax can be more easily implemented. It can largely be built on the existing tax infrastructure. We pay a lot of taxes, excise taxes, and other federal taxes today. We just add this one to the list. There's another advantage. A revenue-neutral carbon tax can ensure that government policy is specifically focused on reducing emissions, not on becoming a revenue stream for other purposes. In other words, the size of government need not increase due to the imposition of a carbon tax to solve a threat to society. By returning the tax revenue back to consumers through reductions in other taxes, payroll taxes, or a simple dividend, we can reduce the burden on the economy and on our most vulnerable citizens. In this current economic downturn, the American families and businesses can hardly afford to be paying a higher cost for energy, so a direct and transparent refund mechanism is a political imperative. Finally, there is another potential advantage to the tax approach. A carbon tax may be a more viable framework for engaging participation by other nations. A tax framework is easier to implement, and it does not cap economic growth. In addition, it can be easily adapted to reflect the circumstances of each country. Given the global nature of the greenhouse gas challenge and the fact that the economic growth in development economies will account for a significant portion of future greenhouse gas emissions, policy options must be flexible in order to encourage global engagement. Now, some people have suggested that a revenue carbon tax has no chance of gaining sufficient support in Congress to become a law. They say a carbon tax is too politically sensitive and that it is easier and more politically expedient to support a cap-and-trade approach because the public will never figure out where it's hitting them. They'll just know they hurt somewhere in their pocketbook. I disagree with this assessment. I believe the American people want climate policy to be transparent, honest, and effective. Economists generally agree that achieving a given emissions target costs less under a tax or fee approach than under cap-and-trade system. The system simply isn't incurring the transactional cost, so more of the cost of the economy goes directly to lowering emissions. I firmly believe it is not too late for Congress to consider a carbon tax as a better policy approach for addressing the risk of climate change. Indeed, there has never been a more opportune time for Congress to pursue this course of action. During this time of economic challenge, we must remember that our nation's economic growth and success are built on the innovation, energy, and ingenuity of the American people.